The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of the grand ballroom, and every head in the room turned to stare at my sister. Elena's face had gone from its usual smug superiority to a shade of white I'd only seen once before in my previous life, when she realized the company she'd stolen from me was actually worthless. But that was then, this was now, and the man whose arm I currently held, her supposedly devoted boyfriend, Marcus Chen, was worth considerably more than any business venture. "Surprised to see me, sis?" I asked, my voice carrying across the sudden silence. The emerald silk of my custom Valentino gown whispered against my skin as I moved forward, each step deliberate, each movement calculated. Marcus squeezed my hand, and I could feel the weight of his family's billion-dollar empire in that simple gesture. "You really should close your mouth, it's unbecoming." This wasn't how prom was supposed to go, not the first time around anyway. In my first life, I died at 28, alone in a hospital bed, my body ravaged by the stress-induced illness that my family's constant abuse had cultivated over years. My sister Elena had taken everything from me, my fiancé, my inheritance, my dignity. She'd done it with such calculated precision that even I hadn't seen it coming until it was too late. The last thing I remembered was her face, beautiful and triumphant, as she signed the papers that transferred the last of what should have been mine into her name. "You were always the weak one, Adrienne," she'd said, her voice honey-sweet. "Mother was right about you." Then darkness, then light. Then I was 17 again, sitting in my childhood bedroom staring at my hands. Young, unmarked by the stress and suffering that had defined my previous existence. The date was March 15th, 2 months before senior prom. 2 months before Elena would steal my prom date, humiliate me in front of the entire school, and set into motion the chain of events that would eventually destroy me. In my first life, I'd been so naive, so desperate for my family's approval, that I'd let it all happen. I'd smiled through the pain, made excuses for their cruelty, and convinced myself that if I just tried harder, loved them more, they'd finally see my worth. But I died knowing the truth. They never would. My mother, Margaret Winters, had chosen her favorite the day Elena was born. Beautiful, charming Elena, who looked just like her. I was my father's daughter, and after he died when I was 5, I became nothing more than an obligation. A reminder of the man she'd married for money and lost before she could fully cash in on his life insurance. This time would be different. The memories of my previous life were crystal clear, like a movie I'd watched 1,000 times. I knew every betrayal before it happened, every trap before it was set. I knew that Elena would start dating Trevor Hayes next week, the boy I'd had a crush on since freshman year. I knew she'd do it specifically because I'd mentioned liking him. I knew that she'd convince him to ask me to prom just so she could steal him away from me at the last minute, leaving me dateless and humiliated. I knew that my mother would encourage this, finding it amusing that her daughters were competing. But most importantly, I knew something I hadn't known before: Marcus Chen. In my first life, Marcus had been Elena's secret boyfriend during senior year. She'd hidden him from everyone because his family, despite their wealth, was new money. Tech fortune, not the old money prestige my mother valued. Elena had strung Marcus along for 2 years while publicly dating other boys, using him for his connections and money while keeping him in the shadows. He'd been devoted to her, completely blind to her manipulation. Until he wasn't. 3 years after high school, I'd heard through the grapevine that Marcus had discovered Elena's betrayal and cut her off completely. By then, his family's company had gone public, and he was worth more than everyone in our social circle combined. Elena had tried desperately to win him back, but he'd moved on, eventually marrying some tech entrepreneur I'd never met. This time, I wasn't going to let Elena have him at all. This time, I was going to save Marcus from 2 years of manipulation, win his loyalty, and use his resources to dismantle everything my family held dear. The plan began simply enough. I knew Marcus tutored calculus at the library every Thursday after school. Elena had mentioned it once in passing during my previous life, complaining about how studious he was. So the Thursday after my rebirth, I showed up at the library with my calculus textbook and a carefully crafted story about struggling with derivatives. Marcus looked up when I approached, his dark eyes curious behind trendy glasses that I now recognized as limited edition Tom Fords. He was handsome in that understated way that 17-year-old me had been too blind to appreciate. Tall, lean, with the kind of bone structure that would only improve with age. "Hi," I said, letting my voice shake slightly. "I'm sorry to bother you, but someone said you tutor calculus? I'm really struggling and my grade is tanking. I can pay you, of course, whatever your rate is." "I don't charge," Marcus said, his voice warm. "Sit down. Let me see what you're working on." I sat, making sure to seem genuinely distressed about the math problems I'd actually mastered in my previous life. As Marcus explained the concepts, I watched him carefully, noting the way his eyes lit up when he talked about mathematics, the patient way he broke down complex problems, the genuine pleasure he took in helping someone understand. He was kind, genuinely, deeply kind, and Elena was going to chew him up and spit him out, not this time. Over the next month, I became Marcus's star pupil. I asked thoughtful questions, showed real improvement, and slowly, carefully, became his friend. I learned about his family. His parents had immigrated from Taiwan with nothing and built a tech empire through sheer brilliance and determination. I learned about his dreams of studying computer science at MIT, his love of classical music, his secret talent for photography, and I made sure never to push for more than friendship. I knew from my previous life that Marcus valued authenticity above all else. The fastest way to lose him was to seem like I was using him, which was exactly what Elena would do. So instead, I was genuine. I shared my own dreams, the ones I'd never achieved in my first life because my family had crushed them. I told him about wanting to study art history, about my secret passion for painting, about how my mother dismissed everything I loved as impractical. "That's harsh," Marcus said one afternoon as we studied in the library. "Parents should support their kids' passions." "Not mine," I said, and let some real bitterness seep into my voice. "My mother only cares about appearances and social status. My sister is her clone, so she gets everything. I'm just there." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, "For what it's worth, I think you're brilliant. Your analysis of that Renaissance art book you showed me last week was incredible. You see things other people miss." My heart clenched. No one had ever told me I was brilliant before. Not in either life. "Thank you," I whispered, and meant it. By the time April arrived, Marcus and I were genuinely close. He'd met my sister once when she'd picked me up from a study session. Elena had barely acknowledged him, too busy texting her current boyfriend to notice the way Marcus watched her, with mild curiosity and nothing more. No instant infatuation, no love at first sight. Just polite disinterest in a pretty girl who couldn't be bothered to say hello. Perfect. Then came the day I'd been preparing for, April 12th, the day Trevor Hayes would ask Elena to be his girlfriend. I knew because in my first life, Elena had bragged about it for weeks. She'd mentioned that Trevor had originally planned to ask me out. We'd been partners in AP English and had gotten along well, but Elena had flirted with him at a party and stolen him. She'd found it hilarious that I'd liked him first. I'd spent the week making sure Trevor and I remained friendly, but nothing more. I was polite in class, smiled at his jokes, but never gave him any indication I was interested. Instead, I'd mentioned several times how I thought he and Elena would make a cute couple. "Your sister?" Trevor had said, confused. "But I thought maybe you and I—" "Oh, Trevor, you're so sweet," I'd interrupted, touching his arm briefly. "But you're not really my type. Besides, Elena's been asking about you, and I know she thinks you're cute. You should ask her out." Trevor's ego predictably latched onto the idea of dating the school's most beautiful girl. Within 2 days, he'd asked Elena out. She'd said yes, thrilled to have acquired another trophy boyfriend. I'd smiled and congratulated them both, ignoring my mother's satisfied smirk. The Friday after Trevor and Elena became official, I asked Marcus if he wanted to go to the spring art gallery opening at the downtown museum. "They're showcasing local student work," I explained. "One of my paintings got accepted. It would mean a lot if you came." "You paint?" Marcus's face lit up. "Adrienne, that's amazing. Of course I'll come. Can I bring my camera? I've been working on a photography series about local artists." "I'd love that," I said, and watched as another piece of my plan clicked into place. The gallery opening was everything I'd hoped for. My painting, a dark, emotional piece about isolation that I'd created by channeling all my pain from my previous life, had been given a prominent position. Marcus spent an hour photographing it from different angles, asking me thoughtful questions about my technique and inspiration. "This is haunting," he said finally, staring at the canvas. "There's so much pain here, but also resilience. Like the subject has survived something terrible and is stronger for it." "That's exactly what it is," I said softly. "Sometimes we have to die to become who we're meant to be." Marcus looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the moment something shifted in his eyes. Not attraction, not yet, but recognition. He saw me, the real me, the person my family had spent years trying to erase. "I'm glad I know you, Adrienne," he said. "I'm glad I know you too." After the gallery, Marcus drove me home in his Tesla, a graduation gift from his parents that he was almost embarrassed to drive. As we pulled up to my house, I saw Elena and Trevor making out on the front porch, clearly positioned to be visible from the street. "That's your sister's boyfriend?" Marcus asked, frowning. "Unfortunately, Trevor's kind of an idiot, but Elena likes having arm candy." "He's not good enough for her?" I laughed, sharp and bitter. "No, she's not good enough for him. Elena's beautiful, but she's rotten inside. She'll chew him up and spit him out the second someone better comes along. That's what she does." Marcus was quiet as we watched Elena pull away from Trevor to check her phone, her face bored. "You really don't like your sister," he observed. "She's made my life hell since we were kids," I said, deciding to give him a glimpse of the truth. "Everything I have, she tries to take. Everything I care about, she destroys. My mother encourages it because Elena's her favorite. I'm just the spare, the disappointment, the one who reminds her of my dead father." "That's abuse," Marcus said bluntly. "What they're doing to you is emotional abuse." I turned to look at him, surprised by the anger in his voice. "I know," I said, "but I'm almost 18. One more year and I can leave for college and never come back." "Where do you want to go?" "Columbia," I said, naming the school I'd gotten into in my previous life but couldn't attend because my mother had refused to help with tuition, giving it all to Elena instead. "They have an incredible art history program." "You'll get in," Marcus said with certainty. "And when you do, if you need help with tuition, my parents have a scholarship fund for talented students. I'll make sure you get an application." Tears stung my eyes. "Marcus, you don't have to—" "I want to," he interrupted. "You deserve better than this, Adrienne. You deserve people who see how special you are." That night, I cried for the first time since being reborn. Not from sadness, but from relief. Someone finally saw me. Someone finally cared. The next month passed in a blur of studying, painting, and spending time with Marcus. We became inseparable, though still just friends. I could feel him wanting to take things further, but I held back, knowing that timing was everything. I needed him to be completely sure, completely committed before I made my move. Meanwhile, Elena's relationship with Trevor was already showing cracks. She was bored with him, I could tell, already looking for her next conquest. In my previous life, that conquest had been me. She'd stolen my prom date for the thrill of it, the power trip of proving she could take anything she wanted. But this time, I was going to let her take Trevor, because Trevor was no longer my prize. Marcus was, and I was going to make absolutely certain Elena knew it. Prom was announced for May 20th. By May 1st, Trevor still hadn't asked Elena, and she was getting anxious. I knew why. In my previous life, Trevor had hesitated because he'd still been interested in me. Elena had convinced him to ask me as a date, planning to steal him at the actual dance for maximum humiliation. Right on schedule, Trevor approached me at my locker on May 3rd. "Hey, Adrienne," he said, running a hand through his hair nervously. "So, prom is coming up." "It is," I said brightly. "Are you going to ask Elena? She's been dropping hints for weeks." Trevor blinked. "Actually, I was thinking, maybe you and I could go? As friends, obviously, since I'm dating your sister. But Elena mentioned maybe doing a group thing, and I thought it might be fun." There it was. The trap, set exactly as I remembered. If I said yes, Elena would swoop in at prom and humiliate me. If I said no, I'd look jealous and petty. That's so sweet of you to offer, I said carefully. But actually, I'm planning to ask someone else. I was waiting to make sure he didn't have a date first. Trevor looked relieved. Oh, cool. Who's the lucky guy? Marcus Chen, I said, loud enough that several people nearby turned to look. We've been spending a lot of time together, and I really like him. I'm just nervous about asking. Marcus Chen? Trevor frowned. Isn't his family loaded? I heard his dad's company is worth like billions. I don't care about his money, I said honestly. I care about him. He's kind and brilliant, and he sees me for who I really am. Within an hour, the entire school knew I planned to ask Marcus to prom. By the end of the day, Elena had heard. She showed up at my bedroom door that night, her face calculating. So, she said, leaning against the doorframe, Marcus Chen. What about him? I didn't look up from my homework. You're really going to ask him to prom? If he doesn't have a date, yes. Elena laughed, the sound sharp. Little Adrian, finally going after what she wants. How bold of you. I learned from the best, I said, meeting her eyes. You take everything you want, consequences be damned. I figured it was time I did the same. Something flickered in Elena's expression, surprise maybe, or the first hint of unease. In my first life, I'd been so passive, so eager to please. This version of me, confident and assertive, was throwing her off balance. Just don't embarrass yourself, she said finally. Marcus is out of your league. Maybe, I agreed, but I'm going to try anyway. What's the worst that could happen? He says no and I go to prom alone? That's not exactly the end of the world. Elena left without another word, but I could feel her wheels turning. She knew something had changed, but she couldn't quite figure out what. The next day, I asked Marcus to prom. I did it simply, without games or manipulation. We were studying in the library as usual when I closed my textbook and said, Marcus, would you want to go to prom with me? He looked up, startled. Prom? I know it's not really your scene, I said quickly. And if you'd rather not, that's totally fine. I just thought we have fun together, and it might be nice to have one good memory from high school before we leave for college. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. Then he smiled, and it was like the sun coming out. I'd love to go to prom with you, Adrian. On one condition. What's that? It's a real date, not just as friends. My heart skipped. You want to date me? I've wanted to date you since the art gallery, Marcus admitted, his ears turning slightly red. But I wasn't sure if you felt the same way. You always seemed to keep me at arm's length. I was scared, I said, which was true enough. My family, they ruin everything I care about. I didn't want them to ruin you too. They can't ruin me, Marcus said firmly. I'm not some fragile flower, Adrienne, and I'm not going anywhere. We started dating officially that day. Marcus was everything Trevor had never been. Thoughtful, genuine, interested in my dreams and opinions. He brought me flowers, took me to museums and concerts, introduced me to his parents, who welcomed me warmly despite my mother's old money pretensions. His mother, May, was a brilliant engineer who'd helped design some of the most innovative software of the decade. His father, David, was a venture capitalist with an eye for talent and a reputation for ruthless business acumen. You make our son happy, May told me one afternoon when I joined them for dim sum. That's all that matters to us. He makes me happy too, I said, and meant it. In my previous life, I'd never found this. Never found someone who saw me, valued me, loved me for who I was, rather than what I could give them. Elena, predictably, was furious. She cornered me one afternoon, her face twisted with an ugly emotion I'd never seen before, genuine jealousy. Marcus Chen? She hissed. You're seriously dating Marcus Chen? Yes, I said calmly. Is that a problem? How did you even meet him? You don't travel in those circles. He tutored me in calculus. We became friends. then more than friends. It's not that complicated, Elena. You're playing out of your league, Elena snapped. Marcus is going to realize you're just a nobody and dump you. Then you'll be humiliated, and everyone will know you tried to social climb. I'm not social climbing, I said, letting some steel into my voice. I'm dating someone who respects me, someone who sees my worth. I know that's a foreign concept to you. Elena's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means you collect people like trophies. Trevor, all your previous boyfriends, they're just accessories to you. You don't actually care about any of them. You just like the idea of being wanted. And you're different? Elena laughed. Please, you're using Marcus for his money, just like I'd use him if he was worth my time. He is worth your time, I said quietly. But you can't have him. He's mine. And unlike everything else you've taken from me, I'm not going to let you steal him. Elena's face went pale, then red. You think you can stop me? I take whatever I want, Adrian. You know that. Try it, I challenged. See what happens. It was a calculated risk, but I knew my sister. Tell Elena she couldn't have something, and she'd become obsessed with taking it. I needed her to make a move on Marcus so he could see for himself what she really was. Over the next 2 weeks, Elena launched a full assault. She showed up at the library during our study sessions, dressed to kill, trying to flirt with Marcus. She accidentally bumped into us at restaurants and coffee shops. She called Marcus, claiming she needed help with her calculus homework. She was taking statistics. She even tried to convince our mother to invite Marcus's family over for dinner. Marcus was polite but distant. After the third coincidental encounter, he pulled me aside. Your sister's trying to seduce me, he said bluntly. I know, I said. I'm sorry, she does this with everything I care about. She has to prove she can take it. It's not going to work, Marcus said firmly. Astasis, I'm not interested in Elena. Even if you and I weren't dating, I wouldn't be interested. She's beautiful, but she's... He struggled for words. Rotten inside? I offered. Empty, Marcus said. There's nothing there but ambition and ego. She doesn't care about art or ideas or anything real. She just wants to win. That's exactly what she is, I agreed. And the more you reject her, the more obsessed she'll become. I'm warning you now, she's going to try something at prom, something public, designed to humiliate both of us. Let her try, Marcus said, pulling me close. I'm not going anywhere, Adrian. And neither are you. True to form, Elena spent the next week planning. I knew because I'd lived through this before. In my previous life, she'd convinced Trevor to dance with me at prom, then made a huge public scene about him cheating on her, positioning herself as the victim. This time she couldn't use Trevor. He was her actual boyfriend. But she'd find another way. She always did. What Elena didn't know was that Marcus's family had decided to sponsor the prom. David Chen's company was always looking for good PR, and sponsoring a local high school event was perfect. The sponsorship came with perks, including the right to bring in professional photographers and videographers to document the event for a promotional video about investing in youth. It also meant that everything that happened at prom would be recorded. Every conversation, every interaction, every attempt at sabotage. The week before prom, Elena made her move. She showed up at my room with an expression I'd learned to dread. False sweetness, masking cruelty. I want to apologize, she said, sitting on my bed uninvited. I've been awful to you about Marcus. You're right, I was jealous. It's just hard seeing my little sister date someone so successful when Trevor is so... ordinary. It's fine, I said carefully, not trusting this sudden change. No, it's not. I want to make it up to you. We went dress shopping together, just us sisters, like we used to. She'd never once gone dress shopping with me, but I didn't point that out. I know this amazing boutique that just got in their new collection. We could make a day of it. I knew what this was. In my previous life, Elena had taken me dress shopping and convinced me to buy a dress that was subtly unflattering. Wrong color, wrong cut, designed to make me look washed out and frumpy next to her. Then she'd swooped in at prom looking like a goddess and stolen my date. That sounds great, I said, smiling. When were you thinking? This Saturday, I'll drive. Saturday came and Elena took me to an exclusive boutique I'd never been able to afford before. The saleswoman greeted Elena by name, clearly a regular customer, and immediately began pulling dresses. For you, Askia Dinan, the saleswoman said to Elena, I have this stunning red Versace that just came in. And for your sister, she looked me up and down dismissively. Perhaps something in a nice beige? Actually, I said pleasantly, I'm looking for emerald green. Do you have anything in a jewel tone? The saleswoman looked surprised. Green for your coloring? I'm not sure that would be flattering. Trust me, I said firmly. Emerald green, fitted, elegant. What do you have? Reluctantly, she brought out a few options. Most were mediocre, designed for someone less confident. But then, almost hidden in the back, I saw it. The dress from my dreams. A custom Valentino in emerald silk that fit like it was made for me. It had been commissioned by another client who'd never picked it up, the saleswoman explained. It was expensive, nearly $5,000. I'll take it, I said. Elena's eyes widened. Adriana, that's so expensive. You can't afford that. Marcus gave me his credit card, I lied smoothly. He told me to get whatever I wanted, his treat. It wasn't entirely a lie. Marcus had offered to pay for my dress, but I'd refused. This dress, I'd bought with money I'd earned from selling 3 of my paintings to a gallery owner Marcus had introduced me to. But Elena didn't need to know that. Elena's face went through several interesting expressions before settling on forced happiness. How generous of him, she said tightly. She ended up buying a dress too, a red Versace that was stunning but I knew would be completely overshadowed by what Marcus was planning to wear. He'd told me he was commissioning a custom suit from his family's favorite tailor, designed to complement my dress perfectly. We were going to look like we'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. The night before prom, my mother called me into her study. She was sitting behind my father's old desk, the one she'd claimed after he died, even though it should have gone to me. Everything of his had disappeared over the years, sold or given away or simply thrown out, except his watch, which I'd hidden in my room and wore every day underneath my sleeve. Adrian, my mother said, not looking up from her phone. I need to discuss something with you. What is it? This boy you're dating, Marcus Chen. What about him? My mother finally looked at me, her expression calculating. His family is very wealthy, very influential. Dating him reflects on this entire family. I'm aware. Then you understand that your behavior at prom tomorrow will be scrutinized. The Chens are new money, which means they're desperate for social acceptance. You need to be perfect. No embarrassing scenes, no drawing negative attention. Elena will be there with Trevor, and I expect you to defer to her. She's the family beauty, the one people expect to see front and center. You're just her sister. Something inside me, some last vestige of hope that my mother might one day love me, finally died. No, I said quietly. My mother blinked. Excuse me? No, I repeated, louder now. I'm not going to defer to Elena. I'm not going to shrink myself to make her look better. I'm going to prom with my boyfriend, and we're going to have a wonderful time. And if that bothers you or Elena, that's your problem, not mine. How dare you? How dare I? I laughed, sharp and bitter. How dare you, Mother? How dare you treat me like garbage for 13 years because I remind you of Dad? How dare you pit Elena and me against each other, encouraging her to destroy everything I care about? How dare you act like my accomplishments mean nothing while celebrating Elena's mediocrity? My mother stood up, her face flushed with anger. You ungrateful little... I'm done, I interrupted. I'm done trying to earn your love. I'm done letting you and Elena make me feel worthless. After graduation, I'm leaving for college and I'm never coming back. You and Elena can have each other. You deserve each other. I walked out before she could respond, my hands shaking but my heart light. I'd never stood up to my mother before, not in either life. It felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. That night, Elena tried one last manipulation. She came to my room around midnight, tears streaming down her face. "Adrian," she sobbed. "I need your help. Trevor and I had a huge fight. He said he wants to break up, that he's not happy. I think he's going to embarrass me at prom tomorrow, cancel on me or make a scene." I looked at my sister, at her perfectly timed tears, and felt nothing but contempt. This was her last play, convince me to feel sorry for her, to give up Marcus as my date so she wouldn't be humiliated by Trevor. Then she'd show up with Marcus on her arm and leave me with Trevor or no one. "That's rough," I said neutrally. "What do you want me to do about it?" Could Marcus maybe talk to him, or could we do a group thing? That way, if Trevor acts up, it won't be as noticeable." "No," I said simply. Elena's tears stopped like a faucet turning off. "No? No, Trevor is your boyfriend. Your problem. Figure it out yourself." "You're really going to let me be humiliated?" "Elena, you've spent years humiliating me. Turnabout is fair play." My sister's face twisted into something ugly. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. "Tomorrow night, everyone is going to see what you really are, a desperate social climber who doesn't belong in Marcus Chen's world. And when he dumps you, I'll be there to pick up the pieces." "We'll see," I said, and closed the door in her face. Prom night arrived with perfect weather and even more perfect timing. Marcus picked me up in a vintage Rolls-Royce his father had lent him for the occasion. He looked devastating in his custom midnight blue suit, the color chosen specifically to complement my emerald dress. When he saw me, his eyes widened. "Adrienne," he breathed, "you're stunning." "So are you," I said, and meant it. We were about to leave when Elena emerged from the house. She'd clearly spent hours on her appearance. Her red dress was perfection, her makeup flawless, her hair styled by an expensive professional, but her face when she saw Marcus and me together was priceless. Pure, undiluted rage mixed with something that might have been fear. Trevor pulled up in his beat-up Honda, looking decidedly ordinary next to the Rolls-Royce. He did a double-take when he saw Marcus's car. "Holy shit," he said. "Chen, is that your dad's Phantom?" "Borrowed for the night," Marcus said easily. "Adrian deserves to arrive in style." I saw the moment Trevor realized he'd been played. He'd agreed to Elena's plan to make me look bad, but now I was the one showing up in a car worth more than his parents' house while he drove a decade-old sedan. Elena saw it too, and her face went even paler. "We should get going," Elena said quickly. "Don't want to be late." "Actually," Marcus said, checking his phone, "there's been a slight change of plans. My parents are already at the venue. They're hosting a pre-prom cocktail hour for some of the families. Adrienne and I need to attend. You're both welcome to join if you'd like." This wasn't in Elena's plan. She'd expected to arrive at prom first, establish her territory, and then swoop in to undermine me when I arrived. Having to attend a pre-prom event hosted by Marcus's family, where she'd be just another guest, was not part of her strategy. "We'll pass," Elena said tightly. "Trevor and I have dinner reservations." "Suit yourself," Marcus said, helping me into the car. "See you there." The cocktail hour was everything I'd hoped for. Marcus's parents had rented out the rooftop terrace of the hotel where prom was being held. About 30 families were there, all parents of students whose families did business with the Chens or were otherwise important to their social circle. My mother and Elena had not been invited. Mei Chen introduced me to everyone as Marcus's brilliant girlfriend, a talented artist who's going to study at Columbia. David Chen showed several people photos of my paintings on his phone, explaining that they'd purchased one for their home collection. I was treated not as a high school student, but as an equal, someone worthy of respect and attention in my own right. It was intoxicating. When we finally went downstairs to the actual prom, I felt invincible. Marcus and I walked into the ballroom arm in arm, and every head turned. My emerald dress shimmered under the lights, Marcus's hand was steady on my back, and behind us, a professional photographer captured everything. Elena was standing near the entrance with Trevor, clearly waiting to make some sort of scene. But when she saw us, really saw us, saw how perfectly matched we were, how confident I looked, how completely devoted Marcus appeared. Something in her crumbled. "Adrienne," she said, stepping forward. "Can I talk to you, privately?" "Anything you want to say, you can say in front of Marcus," I replied. Elena's eyes darted around, noting the cameras, the other students watching with interest. She'd planned some sort of public confrontation, but the optics were all wrong. I looked like a princess. She looked desperate, and everyone was watching. "Fine," she bit out. "I just wanted to say that Marcus and I have been talking." "No, we haven't," Marcus interrupted calmly. "I've responded politely to your messages and phone calls, but we haven't been talking." "Let me be clear, Elena, I'm not interested. I've never been interested. I'm in love with your sister." The ballroom went silent. This was the first time Marcus had said he loved me, and he'd chosen to do it in front of everyone, leaving no room for doubt or manipulation. Elena's face cycled through several expressions before settling on fury. "You don't love her," she spat. "You barely know her. She's using you for your money, can't you see that?" "Actually," Marcus said, pulling out his phone, "I can prove that's not true. Adrienne, do you mind if I share something?" I nodded, curious about what he had planned. Marcus pulled up his banking app and showed Elena, and by extension, everyone nearby, a recent transaction. $5,000 paid to Adrienne Winters dated 2 weeks ago. "I offered to buy Adrienne's prom dress," Marcus explained. "She refused. She said she wanted to buy it herself with money she earned. So she sold 3 paintings to a gallery and used that money for her dress. When I insisted on contributing something, she asked me to donate to the school's art program instead. This $5,000 went to fund art supplies for underprivileged students." He looked at Elena. "Someone who's using me for money wouldn't do that." The watching students murmured appreciatively. Several people pulled out their phones, clearly already texting about the drama. Elena's face was scarlet. "This is ridiculous. Trevor, we're leaving." But Trevor wasn't paying attention to Elena. He was staring at me, at the dress, at Marcus, with an expression of dawning realization. "You knew," Trevor said slowly. "That day I was going to ask you to prom. You knew Elena was planning something." "I knew my sister," I corrected. "And I knew I deserved better than being someone's backup plan." Trevor turned to Elena. "Is that true? Were you planning to steal Adrienne's date?" "Of course not." Elena's voice was shrill now. "This is absurd. Adrienne is making things up because she's jealous." "Actually," a new voice interrupted, "I have proof." Everyone turned. Walking toward us was a girl named Claire Monroe, someone I barely knew. She was holding her phone, and on the screen was a text message thread. "Elena texted me last week," Claire explained, her voice carrying in the silent room. "She wanted me to help her humiliate Adrienne tonight. She was planning to have Trevor dance with Adrienne, then make a scene about them cheating and swoop in to comfort Marcus. She offered me $500 to go along with it." Claire looked at me, her expression apologetic. I didn't agree, obviously. I just kept the texts in case they were needed. She held up her phone, and several students crowded around to read the messages. The gasp that went through the crowd was audible. "That's fake," Elena shrieked. "She's lying." "I'm not," Claire said calmly, and I'm not the only person you texted. Want me to ask around?" 2 more girls stepped forward, phones in hand. Then a boy. Then another. Within minutes, 6 different people had shown texts or messages from Elena, all outlining various plans to sabotage my prom night. The room was absolutely silent, except for the whisper of fabric as Elena backed away, her face a mask of humiliated rage. "You did this," she said, pointing at me. "You set me up. You knew I knew you'd be yourself," I interrupted, my voice calm. "I knew you'd try to destroy this for me, just like you've destroyed everything else I've ever cared about. The difference is, this time I was ready. This time I had people who actually cared about me, not because of what I could give them, but because of who I am." "You think you've won?" Elena's voice was venomous. "Yeah, you think this is over? I'll tell Mother, she'll cut you off, throw you out." "Go ahead," I said. I don't need her money or her approval. I have a full scholarship to Columbia funded by the Chen Family Foundation. I have my paintings, which are selling well enough to support myself. And I have Marcus. What do you have, Elena? A reputation for manipulation? A boyfriend who now knows you were planning to cheat on him? A room full of people who've seen who you really are? Elena looked around wildly, seeing the disgusted faces, the phones raised to record her meltdown. She grabbed Trevor's arm. We're leaving, now. Trevor pulled away some. No, I'm done, Elena. I should have listened to Adrienne weeks ago. You're not worth it. He walked away, leaving Elena standing alone in her red dress, surrounded by whispers and pointed fingers. And then, in a move I hadn't anticipated, Elena lunged at me. She was fast, her hand raised to strike, but Marcus was faster. He stepped between us, and Elena's palm connected with his chest instead of my face. The crack echoed through the room. Don't, Marcus said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. Don't you dare touch her. Security was already moving toward us. Two large men in suits, Chen family security, I realized, gently but firmly took Elena by the arms. Miss Winters, one of them said, you're being escorted out for attempted assault. The police have been notified. Police? Elena's voice was shrill with panic. For what? I barely touched him. Assault is assault, the security guard said, and it was captured on camera. He gestured to the professional videographers Marcus's father had hired. As Elena was marched out of the ballroom, still screaming threats and denials, I felt Marcus's hand find mine. Are you okay? He asked softly. I'm perfect, I said, and meant it. The rest of prom was a blur of dancing, laughter, and congratulations. People I'd never spoken to came up to express support. Several girls thanked me for exposing Elena's behavior. Apparently, she'd bullied or manipulated many of them over the years. Trevor apologized profusely for believing Elena's lies, and Marcus never left my side, his hand always finding mine, his eyes filled with love and pride. When they announced prom king and queen, I was shocked to hear my name called alongside Marcus's. We'd won by a landslide, everyone voting for us out of sympathy, admiration, or just the sheer drama of it all. As we danced the final dance, Marcus leaned down and whispered, I meant what I said earlier. I love you, Adrienne. I love you too, I whispered back. Thank you for seeing me. Always, he promised. The aftermath was swift and brutal, exactly as I'd planned. Elena was arrested for assault when we pressed charges. A misdemeanor, but enough to create a record. The video of her meltdown went viral online, racking up millions of views within days. Several news outlets picked up the story. Spoiled rich girl's prom meltdown and teens attempted sabotage backfires spectacularly were among the kinder headlines. My mother tried to do damage control, but it was too late. The texts Claire and the others had shown were leaked online, providing clear evidence of Elena's character. Every college Elena had applied to received copies of the evidence, anonymous tips from concerned citizens who thought admissions boards should know who they were accepting. Elena's acceptance to Yale was rescinded. So was her spot at Cornell, Duke, and Northwestern. By the end of June, she had nowhere to go. Meanwhile, I graduated as valedictorian, something I'd worked toward in secret, knowing that academic success was the one thing Elena couldn't steal or sabotage. My speech focused on resilience, on rebuilding yourself after betrayal, on the importance of surrounding yourself with people who see your worth. I didn't name Elena, but everyone knew. Marcus and his family were in the front row, cheering louder than anyone. Columbia confirmed my acceptance with a full scholarship from the Chen Family Foundation. Marcus was going to MIT, only a few hours away. We'd make it work. In July, my mother finally showed her hand. She called me into her study and told me I was disinherited. My father's trust fund, which should have been split between Elena and me, was being given entirely to Elena to help her recover from this terrible ordeal. Fine, I said calmly. I don't want anything from this family. You'll regret this, my mother said coldly. Without family support, you'll struggle. You'll see how hard the world really is. I'll take my chances, I replied. What my mother didn't know, what I'd discovered during my research with Marcus's help, was that my father's trust fund wasn't entirely under her control. A separate trust, one my father had created specifically for me before he died, was being held by his brother, my Uncle James, whom my mother had cut off from the family years ago. Uncle James had been trying to reach me for years, but my mother had intercepted all his letters and calls. Marcus helped me find him. Within a week, I was sitting in Uncle James's office, learning that my father had left me nearly $2 million, inaccessible until I turned 18 but earning interest for 13 years. With the accumulated interest, it was now worth closer to $3 million. "Your father knew your mother was cruel," Uncle James explained, tears in his eyes. "He made me promise to keep this safe for you, no matter what. I've been watching from afar, waiting for you to turn 18 so I could finally give it to you." "Why didn't you fight for custody?" I asked. "I tried," he said sadly, "but Margaret had better lawyers and made me look like an unfit guardian. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you sooner." "You protected what mattered?" I said, squeezing his hand. "Thank you." With my inheritance secured, I had everything I needed. Financial independence, a full scholarship, a future at my dream school, and a man who loved me for exactly who I was. Elena, meanwhile, spiraled. Without Yale or any other prestigious college, she enrolled in community college, a devastating blow to her ego. My mother tried to use her connections to get Elena into various universities, but the video of her meltdown had spread too far. No one wanted the liability. Trevor started dating Claire Monroe, the girl who'd exposed Elena's texts. They were happy together, I heard. By August, as I packed for Columbia, Elena made one last attempt. She showed up at my room, her face gaunt, her eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Adrian, I'm so sorry. I was terrible to you. I was jealous and cruel, and I—" "Stop," I interrupted Arnie. "You're not sorry. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference." "Please," Elena begged. "We're sisters. Can't you forgive me?" I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw not the powerful villain who'd tormented me, but a pathetic girl who'd built her entire identity on tearing others down. In my previous life, I might have felt pity, but I died because of her cruelty, and I'd been given a second chance. I wasn't going to waste it on someone who'd proven over and over that she was incapable of change. "No," I said simply, as Sim, "I can't forgive you. Maybe someday, but not now, not after everything." Elena's face crumpled, but I turned away. I had packing to finish. 5 years later, I graduated from Columbia with honors, my thesis on Renaissance art lauded as groundbreaking. My paintings had been featured in several galleries, and I'd sold enough to establish myself as a serious emerging artist. Marcus and I had been together through it all, through his time at MIT, through my years at Columbia, through the challenges of young adulthood. We got engaged on the anniversary of Prom in the same ballroom where Elena had her meltdown. Marcus had rented the entire space, filled it with flowers and candles, and gotten down on one knee in front of everyone who'd witnessed that night 5 years before. "You changed my life," he said, tears in his eyes. "You showed me what real love looks like. Will you marry me?" "Yes," I said, not caring that I was crying too. "Always yes." The wedding was everything I'd ever dreamed of. My Uncle James walked me down the aisle. Marcus's parents sat in the front row, beaming. Friends from Columbia and MIT filled the seats, celebrating with us. Elena and my mother were not invited. I'd heard through the grapevine that Elena had eventually finished community college and gotten a job as a receptionist at a mid-tier law firm. She'd gained weight, lost her looks-based confidence, and, according to sources, spent most of her time alone, estranged from most of our former social circle. My mother had sold the family house to pay off debts, the old money fortune squandered through years of maintaining appearances they couldn't afford. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, but I felt no pity either. They'd made their choices. I'd made mine. As Marcus and I danced our first dance as husband and wife, I thought about my previous life, about dying alone, full of regrets, wishing I'd fought back. This life was everything that one wasn't, full of love, success, joy, and people who valued me. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus murmured, pulling me closer. "How lucky I am," I said honestly. "How grateful I am for you, for this life, for everything." "I'm the lucky one," Marcus said, kissing my forehead. "You're extraordinary, Adrian Chen." You always have been. Adrian Chen. I'd taken his name without hesitation, eager to shed the last tie to the family who'd never wanted me. I was no longer Adrienne Winters, the overlooked daughter, the abused sister. I was Adrienne Chen, artist, Columbia graduate, beloved wife, and survivor. I'd died once, unloved and unappreciated. I'd been reborn into the same circumstances, but this time, I'd refused to be a victim. I'd fought back, not with cruelty, but with strategy. I'd protected myself and the people who mattered. And I'd won. The ballroom was filled with laughter and music, the same space where Elena had once tried to destroy me. But now it was mine. A place of joy, not trauma. A place where I'd started my real life. The one I deserved. Marcus spun me around and I laughed, feeling lighter than air. The past couldn't hurt me anymore. The people who'd tried to break me had failed, and the future stretched ahead, full of promise and possibility. I'd learned the hard way that blood doesn't make family. Love does. Choice does. The people who see your worth and choose to stay, those are your family, and I'd found mine. As the night drew to a close, one of Marcus's cousins approached me. "I heard there was some drama at your prom," she said, grinning. "Something about your sister?" "Ancient history," said, smiling. "Not worth discussing on my wedding day." "Fair enough. I just want to say Marcus talks about you constantly. How brilliant you are, how talented, how kind. He really hit the jackpot." "So did I said, watching my husband laugh with his father across the room. "So did I." The reception ended near midnight, and as Marcus and I left for our honeymoon, I took one last look at the ballroom. 5 years ago, I'd walked in here terrified, armed only with foreknowledge and determination. I'd walked out victorious, but still uncertain of what the future held. Now, I walked out as myself, fully realized, completely loved, and finally, truly free. Elena had tried to take everything from me twice. She'd failed both times. And in trying to destroy me, she'd destroyed herself. Justice, I'd learned, doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes it looks like simply living well, loving deeply, and refusing to let the people who hurt you define your story. I'd been given a second chance at life, and I hadn't wasted it. I'd built something beautiful, a career I loved, a marriage that fulfilled me, a future that excited me. Elena had nothing but regrets and what-ifs, and as Marcus and I drove away into our new life together, I realized something profound. I'd already won. Not at prom, though that had been satisfying. I'd won by becoming someone Elena could never be, someone real, someone genuine, someone capable of love and being loved in return. The girl who'd died alone at 28 would barely recognize me now. She'd been broken, defeated, crushed by the weight of family betrayal. I was strong, successful, surrounded by people who cherished me. Rebirth had given me knowledge, but I'd given myself victory, and that made all the difference.